You are listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my regular weekly guests, and we are all here to share the research, the science, and the strategies, as well as some of the fun, to help you to create a more active life. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my guest this week, Alison Salmond. Now, Alison and I actually go a long way back. It's over 20 years now, and she was actually my mentor when I first started delivering training courses, so it's quite an interesting one. However, we're not talking about training courses today. That's for another day. This episode is actually going out during Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, and Alison has been through the experience of ovarian cancer, which is what we're going to be talking about. So, Alison, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and what happened.
Hi, my name is Alison Salmond. So I am 58 years of age, and I've been in the health industry, as Sarah said, for many years. In fact, I think I've been teaching for nearer 40 years, which is, it shows you go, oh. No, I haven't been teaching that long. But yes, so back in April or March 2022, I was surprisingly diagnosed with ovarian cancer. I actually didn't think it was anything other than back pain. And from there on in, it always was almost like a roller coaster, from being diagnosed with an MRI that I had paid for privately. And then within, I'd say, the next 24 hours, 48 hours, I had all tests, CT scans, blood tests, ultrasound scans. So I had lots and lots of scans, and then within another 2 weeks I was having a full hysterectomy, being told that it wasn't just a benign tumour, it was actually a cancerous tumour. And then once that surgery was over, I had another chat with a gynecologist who said that actually there was a couple of areas in the lymph nodes, in the uterus, and also the para-aortic lymph nodes, which are actually just below the rib cage. So where the area of the rib cage is, right here. So you've got three lovely little lymph nodes that actually are associated with gynecology, which I would never have known that either. So, you learn something new through all the different diagnoses. And so therefore they wanted to put me through chemotherapy because it wasn't directly just within the ovary tumour. And then I was rushed through chemo. So that was within 6 weeks of finishing my surgery. I was just about back on my feet, and then straight into chemo for 6 sessions. And it should have been every 3 weeks, but what happens is sometimes your bloods are not right, so you're bumped off for a week, maybe 2 weeks. And so I did the chemo from June to November 2022.
Wow. So you said that you didn't think there was anything going on, you just had some back pain. Were there no other symptoms?
No, because we're of a certain age, Sarah, what happened is I thought a lot of it was either post-menopause. My dad had died back in 2017, September 2017, very, very suddenly. It was 5 weeks. He literally walked into a hospital, and 5 weeks later he was dead of a very aggressive cancer. So we didn't really have time to think about that. And then, of course, the pandemic happened, and we were already planning to move to Spain. So by the time we did that, that was all very highly stressful for those few years. And then, of course, COVID was still very apparent, and there were certain things that you could and couldn't do. We had a private healthcare because you had to do that for the residencia here. But again, they were saying if you weren't vaccinated, and I didn't do a vaccine, then you couldn't go into some of these hospitals and things. So in effect, I actually had a setback from that. And because I had already had back pain over 8 to 10 years because of all the major amount of running I've done, I just thought, yeah, I've changed my bed, I've changed my car, I'm running up and down mountains, I've changed my lifestyle. Probably the back pain has just got a little bit worse. I did go to an osteopath here and also a UK trained physio. And quite interestingly, they were like, no, 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 you don't need an MRI. It's part of the evidence-based medicine that you don't need an MRI. And I kept thinking, but it's getting worse. And so that, you know, even with my osteopathic knowledge, I'm thinking, going, it's getting worse. Did I have any other symptoms? Yes, I was a little bit more tired. I was going to bed much earlier. But I would still get up in the morning and go for a run, and that would give me the boost of energy. and it was really interesting because I actually didn't really do anything about it until a retired GP here said to me, is it stopping you doing what you love? And I went, yeah, it is actually. He goes, you're probably right. Because I said, I know I've got a spondylolisthesis, it's probably degenerated disc. He goes, you're probably right. He said, but why not just have an MRI? So in the end, I paid privately for an MRI here. And obviously the rest was history, but it was such a big shock because other than that, I didn't really have any other symptoms. So, you know, some people would say, did I lose weight? Well, actually, back in 2020, I got a grip on myself anyway from the lockdown, and actually changed my nutritional diet. So I changed the way I was eating. By the time we came here, the heat and the intensity of the heat actually reduced my appetite. So yeah, I probably did lose a bit of weight. But actually, for me, I didn't really notice that it was extreme. And you know what happens in our industry, we love being slim. So it's like, oh yeah, I'm slim, great. You know, and so I wasn't really associating that with any, you know, chronic disease just because I'd lost a bit of weight. The tiredness, again, I just put down to menopause. And I was still able to do everything I wanted to do.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's like you say, you'd sort of changed your nutrition, you were in a different country, different heat, different appetite things. And a lot of these things that they sort of say, oh, has this changed? Sometimes you can put it down to what's going on in your everyday life. And it just highlights the importance of actually really listening to your body and getting checked out sooner rather than later. But it's not always easy. I know I was speaking to somebody a few months ago on this podcast, and she literally found out she had breast cancer purely because she'd been made redundant and thought, oh, I might as well take advantage of the healthcare package and get a full scan before I actually leave. And it was, wow, oh, goodness. And she said, otherwise, no symptoms, nothing. You would never have known. So sometimes it is really getting back in tune with your body, isn't it? And thinking, this doesn't seem right. But it sounds like you are a very highly qualified fitness professional, one of the most highly qualified Pilates ones, and also teaching all forms of Pilates courses, and an osteopath. So your awareness of your body, your awareness of how it feels is really, really high. And yet even then, it's kind of, okay, it's probably back pain. So
I mean, even things like the one symptom I have that I realise now I had was actually I'd always want to go for a pee all the time. So because the tumour was actually 8 centimetres. Now, years ago, I used to get issues with cystitis. So I was always going, you know, if I was going to go to the doctor for anything, I wouldn't say always, I'd have 5 years where I wouldn't bother going. But I always would drink lots and lots of water because I knew that was the way to make sure it would flush through. You know, I'd wear cotton underwear, all of those sort of things so you don't sort of like stimulate that or actually there's no additional bacteria. So I went to the doctors in the UK about 2018, 2019, I think. And because, you know, they put it down to vaginal dryness because of the menopause, and they gave me Vagifem pessaries, which I still went back. She goes, have they? I went, like that. But again, as a female, didn't think about, well, let's just do a full scan, just left it as is. And because I've never been, what's the word I'm looking for? I haven't relied on doctors because actually sometimes as a GP, I don't think that they really know as much as they should do. And sometimes you can find out a lot more yourself, and certainly if you're body aware. Anyway, cutting the long story short, of course, you think about our teaching. How many times would you have your clients back to back and you go for a pee regardless of whether you wanted to because you knew you had another client? So again, all of those sort of things that we do on a natural work time basis. So it wouldn't have tallied in my head that actually, oh, you're going for a pee a lot more and hardly passing any water. And it wasn't until, of course, it was all gone, I went, oh my God, I can go for hours. And suddenly I got a full bladder. to actually, to empty my bladder properly. So I would suggest that if anyone is, worried about certain symptoms, that would probably be one of the big symptoms. Because if you think about it, if an ovary is growing, then it is going to press on your bladder.
We need more awareness of some of these more subtle symptoms, don't we? Because I think for me, the ones I'm aware of very much are abdominal bloating, which you didn't have, weight loss, which for some people, they may be trying to lose weight anyway and not necessarily notice that their weight loss is perhaps a little bit steadier than it could be. Like anyone who's ever tried to lose weight will know weight loss is not linear. It's here, there and everywhere. But actually, if it does become quite linear, if it is quite very structured, then quite often that might be, you think, hang on a minute, it's a very steady weight loss. That's kind of not the way it normally happens. But like you say, needing to pee a lot, fatigue. If you're going through a lot anyway in your life, you might, like you say, you might put it down to menopause, to age, to doing more. But it's being aware. It's what's the word I want? It's the combination, isn't it? It's thinking, hang on a minute, there's a lot of things going on here. And this is where I think we need that awareness, don't we, of,
And I also think that that's the problem with ovarian cancer, is because the symptoms are very subtle. And so people wouldn't necessarily associate them with anything more than maybe the menopause until it's too late. There is a lady here, actually, was stage 4. I actually was stage 3C in the end. Not that it made any, difference to me what stage it was, because to be honest, it was still a shock regardless. And she did have a much more abdominal bloating. Now, again, as we're in the fitness industry, I carry my weight on my stomach anyway. I've always had skinny legs and everything. So, for me to have a flat stomach, I'm like, yeah, like this. So again, that wouldn't have, unless it was really bloated and I was thinking, God, what are you changing into this apple shape? But again, we would be putting it down to shapes and menopause and things like that. What I found really interesting is, one, osteopathy here is not a particularly well-trained industry. In the UK, we do have better training. But I was really shocked with the physio because, of course, he was UK trained. He kept on about the nice guidelines. It's not evidence-based to send you for an MRI. But as someone that was fit and healthy and slim like myself, yes, I can see that I tick the boxes for him to go, it was a musculoskeletal issue. And of course, when he pressed on me, there was pain on palpation. But even so, if I was the clinician having that as a client, I would have gone, you know what, just go and waste your time and have an MRI, that sort of thing. Sorry to waste your time. And even the GP here said, look, go into it. What you're thinking is probably right. And of course, no one was more shocked than him, me, and actually my doctor down here on the coast, because again, you're looking at someone that's fit and healthy, someone that's always had health and fitness in their life. But if reading beyond just the physical symptoms of ovarian cancer, I started obviously listening to people like Galamati and other people. And if you look at, there's actually sometimes a real trend of the type of people that may or may not suffer with certain cancers. And I'm not saying it's all facts, but it's quite an interesting overview. So are you that person that does absolutely everything? Are you that person that is looking after everyone else except yourself? So therefore you're not focusing on your own, actually listening to what's happening in your body.
I do honestly believe that a lot of us have lost touch with what's normal for our bodies and what's not. And I think particularly now we're coming out of pandemic and things like that, people are under a lot more physical as well as psychological stress. And so we're putting things down to getting back to normal. And it's very easy sometimes to overlook things because, it's just because we're X or Y, or because I've gained weight, because I've lost weight, because I'm not as active, and it's very easy to sort of write symptoms off just because we can, rather than saying.
And also the thing is, you don't rest in that. No one really wants to go to the hospital. No one really wants to do tests. We're ingrained into do mammograms and cervical smear tests, but really, we do it because it's like tick the boxes, but you're not actually wanting to do any of these things.
That's it. And if you don't do it, people listening, if you are not doing it, or if you have family and friends who are not going along for their screenings and things, make them do it, because honestly and truthfully, for the sake of a few moments of discomfort, it's well worth it. We're not saying it'll pick everything up. Sometimes it doesn't, but you've got a much better chance the earlier you can pick up things like this. So activity then. You have always been a very, very active person. Running, Pilates, we're in the fitness field. We know all the benefits of it, and you've always been very active. How did having ovarian cancer impact on your activity?
So I, at first, because with the actual initial hysterectomy, of course, I was told by the doctor, you cannot do any form of exercise over the first 4 weeks. Now, walking, of course, is all that she would allow me to do. I wasn't allowed to swim. I wasn't allowed to do absolutely anything. So it got to the stage that I was having to actually put myself down on a bed, not on a bed, but on a couch, to ensure that I didn't do exercise, because probably like you'd want to keep walking or keep moving around. And so I was actually having to restrict myself. And because I restricted myself, I then was thinking, am I getting lazier? You doing it's all this is going through your head. However, I thought, no, listen to the doctor, you just have to recover. And in the process of that, I ended up with DVT, because of course I was lying around, and I didn't realize that cancer makes the blood viscous, so much thicker. So of course, even if that there was still sort of cancer in the body so much, as much that there was that thickness in the blood. And although had taken the heparin for the first 4 weeks, I then stopped that, and it was about 6 weeks later, when I was actually doing a bit more movement, that I ended up with a DVT. So the doctors were actually discouraging you to do any form of exercise. So then once I got past that 4 weeks, I was driving, I was walking tall into the office. She said, oh my God, you've really, you're like so much better than anyone else. Normally people are crawling in, I'm just back to my normal posture. And then, of course, what happened after that, I thought, right, I now need to start to think about going into the gym. What I found is I was able to walk, and I wasn't running at that point, just able to walk and do gentle weights. My weights were quite low, and I did some Pilates. And I thought I was improving quite well until they said, right, you're going to do chemotherapy. That was the only time, I must admit, that I burst into tears, because I really didn't want to do chemo. And then once going through chemo, it was a completely different ballgame, because the breathlessness, I never really thought, I thought I'm healthy. I actually didn't know what I was thinking, what was going to happen. But I couldn't walk for more than 5 minutes at times. So certainly it was a chemo every 3 weeks. So the first week I'd literally walk 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. And then I'd get to feeling a 6 stage around day 3 to day 6. And then bit by bit, I'd start to feel a bit more improvement. So the first week I didn't tend to do much exercise other than just a couple of 5-minute walks a day, literally. And then I started to be able to do a little bit of gentle Pilates. And I have a treadmill here. So I've converted a garage into a gym. So I'd walk a little bit more on the treadmill, see if I could push it 10 minutes and 15 minutes. And then as it became week 2 and 3, I could start to lift a few more weights. But actually the weights were half the weight that I would normally do. But it was just, again, about keeping me moving. And quite interestingly, I had a contact with a mutual friend of ours, Emma Newham, who introduced me into more yin yoga and actually more mental stuff. So then I went down that road just to ensure that I didn't feel that I was going to not necessarily quite kill myself, but obviously just get frustrated by not being able to exercise. And that did seem to get worse as we were progressing through those 6-7 months. But yeah, so I did my best, but it was definitely, out of the 3 weeks, it was week 2 and 3 that I would do something every day. What I did have the benefit of is a swimming pool here. So I would do 50 lengths a day. And it's a 10-meter pool, so it's not long. I'd do 50 meters a day, and the days that I felt really, really rubbish, I would just get in and maybe just do 2 to 10 lengths.
This is where it's so important to understand, isn't it? Is that you can still be active, but there's nothing linear about it. As we do, when we talk about linear, we mean steadily doing more, steadily progressing. Whereas actually with things like this, it is, and one of the things I always talk about on the Can Rehab course that I work on is exercising to tolerance. And as you say, some days that might be 5 minutes, other days it might be, 5 lengths, or it might be 50 minutes, or it might be longer. And this is where it's so important during cancer treatment that, yes, we should be exercising. It is important, but it's that to tolerance, isn't it, that's so important. It's don't use all your energy up on exercising because you think you have to. Just think, if it's a 5-minute walk, that's great. Or it might be a stretch, or it might be gentle Pilates, or it might be a lot more. And I know people who've carried on running through chemotherapy, but other people have been runners and been floored by
thinking,
it.
I feel like that.
Yeah, and this is where it's so important. Ideally, get yourself a personal trainer or somebody who knows about this, and even if you just get advice from them initially rather than necessarily working with them, because we know the evidence that's coming through. I mean, there's more and more and more and more and more evidence coming through about how important it is to be active at all stages, from prehab, from before treatment, right through all the treatment and the recovery. But it's understanding that, and I think, mind you, this would apply to anything, isn't it? Do something that feels good, that doesn't tire you out, but that you feel energized, even if it's just mentally energized from it. And for a lot of people, they're not getting advice, and this is something I hear all the time, is people
I must admit, as much as the oncologist and of course the gynecologist for young beautiful women, they didn't advise on exercise or anything. That wasn't part of their remit. That's very, very medical here, and that's what they want. Is they want the surgery done, they want the treatment done, and they want to tick those boxes. She said a few things afterwards, since I've had follow-up blood tests, because quite interestingly, my cholesterol has got higher. But actually, I've done some background reading, and chemotherapy obviously does destroy your muscle tissue, and it actually does raise your cholesterol as well. And she's going, "Oh well, you need to eat healthy." And I went, "Come on, I eat healthy." I said, "What have I got to do now? Not have any?" I said, "The only real solid fat food I have is I love Greek yogurt." And I said, "So really, there's not anything what I would consider that you would want me to decrease in order to lower my cholesterol." So anyway, I'm just upping my omega-3s and things like that, and see if that makes any difference. But the other thing I found, what I wanted to do for me, because I am a runner, and as you know, I love running, and I've used to run 5 days a week. I actually just, the 5K, the Couch to 5K app, I just put that on my phone, and some days I'd walk, and of course it'd be 30 seconds run and then walk, and that's what I would do. So I'd follow there, but I wouldn't, as you said, it wasn't a linear progression. I might do the first week and then come back, and then I might get to week 2 and then come back to the first week. So all the time I was going backwards and forwards, but at least it was giving me something to work towards, even if it was just 3 times a week, that I felt that, oh my God, I'm running for 30 seconds, or I'm running for a minute.
And that's the thing, isn't it? It's finding what works for you. And it's like you say about, the medics, it's not their job to advise on exercise. And this is where, certainly within the UK and the States, there's huge movements now to include fitness professionals in the same way that cardiac rehab, you kind of have a cardiac event, and a fitness professional, a clinical exercise specialist, will be part of the team right from the word go, on ward rounds, whatever, advising you on how to become more active. And I know this is something that we're really, really working towards, worldwide, as well as I'm aware very much of what's happening in the States and in the UK. But it's that there is somebody there that can advise on appropriate activity right from the moment of diagnosis. And prehab is becoming huge now. So many people, whether it's a week or a month, right, let's get you into prehab, let's get you into the clinics, into the clinical settings, and exercise people. And I think this is something that's so important, because, the best will in the world, the surgeons, the oncologists, the nurses, that's not their role. Their role is vast already. So yeah, yeah. So, but for them to have the backup of being able to say, right, we're going to talk to you about activity. In actual fact, Sarah's going to talk to you about activity. John's going to talk to you about activity, because that's his role within this team. And I think when it becomes part of the team, part of that multidisciplinary format, I think people will take much more notice of it, because you've got such an advantage. You like you say, 40 years of experience within the health and fitness field. You know how important it is. And, that's a huge advantage. But there's so many people out there who have not got any knowledge. For them, their knowledge of fitness, if you like, goes back to school when they had to climb those ropes in the gym or leap over a horse or a vault. And that they're immediately thinking, I can't do this. It's too much. That's not who I am. Whereas having somebody saying, let's show you some stretches, let's show you some mobility, let's show you some ways that you can ease where the scars are. I think, it's so important, isn't it? Because we've got that knowledge and other people haven't. So being able to share it, being able to, show people how they can start. Like you say,
definitely. And it doesn't have to be hard. It literally can be 5 minutes. Look, I would drive, because, as I said, we live in the mountains, so there's not a flat bit. We live on a hill, so I would drive to the area. There's a track opposite us that's as flat as it's going to be. There is a little bit, and even walking up the elevated bit on that for 5 minutes, absolutely breathless, really, really breathless. And I think, I know it's all different chemos. Different chemos do different things to different people. But ultimately, that I did not expect that. I don't know I don't know what I expected, but I certainly didn't expect that. I mean, I knew that I was going to lose my hair. I knew, the aesthetic side, what was going to happen. But I think when you're so fit for so long, to have your fitness literally deteriorate in front of your eyes.
It is. I mean, I can't compare it, but when I tend to spend time in Colorado, one of the first things I do is hike up this particular foothills of the Rockies. And the first time I did it, I mean, literally, I was about 100 yards up, and I could barely breathe. And I was thinking, what on earth happened to my fitness in literally 24 hours? Yesterday, I could walk for miles. Today, and then I thought, oh no, I'm 6,000 feet up, going up a hill. So I'm at altitude already, going up a hill, and that's where, and that was a shock. So I can't imagine what it's like for someone like you who's so used to running to suddenly think, gosh, I can walk for 5 minutes and that's it. And this is where, it's impossible to say this is what chemo is going to do to you, because it's so different to everybody. But it's so important, isn't it, to be able to access appropriate advice and, just say, do you know what? If you just feel like going for a 5-minute stroll, that's fine. It's the main thing is that you don't just sit and do absolutely nothing, whether it's a gentle stretch or some mobility, even deep breathing.
Yeah, I mean, even if you don't have the access to a personal trainer or a trainer, there's little apps, and some of the little apps out there are not bad. I'm not saying that they're amazing, but some of them are not bad. And certainly, I think I used a couple where they were just beginner, and you just press beginner in. I even ended up buying a bike, not the Peloton one, the other one, the Nordic Trek, the iFit. So basically, and I would be cycling with their little studio classes. And I would just because they got control of your resistance, I'm going, not a chance. So I'd be like my resistance was going down as theirs was going up. But again, it was just pedaling. So, and I know I'm very fortunate to be able to buy that. But even so, if you have money to just buy it doesn't have to be a fancy bike. It could be anything that you're just pedaling through. Stationary bikes, these days, they're fairly cheap anyway. People sell them so much on eBay because they bought them for a few months and got rid of
Yeah, exactly. And you can hire them as well.
Yeah,
you can actually hire them. If you don't want to commit to a purchase, you can hire one, even if it's just for your recovery period. But it's finding what you enjoy doing, isn't it? It's finding something that feels good. And I know there are a lot of kind of what I would call semi-private pools out there, so the risk of infection is much lower. But it's for me. I know within the UK, Macmillan have huge resources, and but also there are growing hubs now where, you know, fitness people will know what else is going on. So if you start to say, well, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do that, they'll go, well, actually this goes on and there's this going on and there's something else, because we know it's so important to be active. You've got the Walking for Health programs, and they are literally a half-hour health walk, and they're as slow as you like. We've got 5K Your Way, which is for people. Yeah, it's similar to Couch to 5K, but it's like Park Run. It's part of the Park Run initiative, but it's literally designed for people going through cancer. So the people that are running it, the people that are there, will have that sort of specialist knowledge.
Yeah. And also the thing is, if people start it depends on how many, because it depends on the chemos as to how many weeks apart you've got things. I mean, I was actually hooked up for 5.5 hours, so I was there the longest anyway. And I always used to get the bed. Everyone else had the seat. See, when I want to sleep on the bed. But if you know how you're rotating, it will take a couple of goes. But once you know that actually this is where I feel rubbish, and actually this is what I need to do in that time. And actually this is when I feel a little bit better, then you're then creating your activity around those better days. And it could be just giving yourself little goals, and and I mean little goals, I don't mean big goals. I mean, literally, as I said, I would get on a bike and do this with the resistance and go, okay, I'm going to be just cycling, I'm going to turn my legs basically for 20 minutes. Or I'm going to get on the treadmill and just walk for 15 minutes. I'm going to lift a weight, and I know that I probably lift blah, 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 but I'm just going to lift weights. I'm just going to do a little chest press, a little back exercise, little shoulders, and then that's it, And it was just enough to keep going, something to do.
That's it, isn't it? It could be 10 squats, 10 push-ups against the wall. It could be just stretching the major muscles in your body.
But quite interesting, I was able to do all my Pilates, I'm not saying complete, I'm still not up to the whole level that I was before it all, but even so, I was still able to do a full reformer workout, missing out 2 or 3 different exercises. But ultimately, I was quite happy, I'm not saying the back when I felt sick, I'm saying most of the other days I could, if I, and I'd probably do that a couple of times a week just to ensure that I was still able to do that.
It's so important though, isn't it, to listen to your body and just sort of say, right, okay, today's a day where, do you know what, it's not going to happen today. It might even just be a relaxation session. That might be what your body needs on that day. But I think the thing is not particularly while you're going through treatment, and that's chemotherapy, radiotherapy, but also if you are starting the hormone treatments after chemo or radiotherapy, then it's accepting that it's not going to be a steady progression. It might not even be progression. Just getting your kit on one day might be enough, whereas other days you may be able to go for a longer walk. And I think that's the important thing, is to really reduce your expectations of it and just think, right, the important thing is that I do something, whether it's a minute or an hour, doesn't matter. It's just it's getting back into the habit. And I know, many years ago, I was at a conference, and one of the guys who had started up the kind of exercises medicine movement with the American College of Sports Medicine, and he said, the hardest part of regular exercise is the regular. You want to get the regular. So if you're having a good day, a bad day, a shocking day, if what you normally do is something at 10 o'clock, do something at 10 o'clock, even if it's just to sit on your mat, even if it's just to put your running shoes on, but just do something associated with it at that time, because it's the habit, isn't it? It's once you let it go. And I think for me, quite often you sort of think, oh, well, I normally would do Pilates at 10 o'clock, but I haven't got the energy today, so I'm just going to sit on the mat. You might think, well, actually, maybe I'll just do one exercise, or I'll just do 2. And quite often it's like, the walking thing. I'm not in the mood for walking today, so I'm just literally going to open my back door and just breathe some fresh air. And then you might think, well, actually, no, I'm going to walk to the end of the garden and back. And that was okay, so I'll do it again. But it's having that time and say, right, I'm going to do something at this time, whether it's a minute or an hour, that's my time. And it's because it's that as soon as you create the habit, and it does take a while, you'll stick with it. And then as you start to feel better, as your energy comes back, you'll be able to do more. But because the habit time is there, that's my time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I prefer to exercise in the morning anyway. So it was quite easy for me to either put a swimsuit on or just put some clothes on. So I was always ready for some form of exercise, regardless of what it is. More often than not, it was swimming first, and I could actually do Pilates in a swimsuit, so that's no problem. Yeah, as you said, it's just having that mental clarity. And I was obviously very fortunate because I didn't have to work, because I actually stopped working for the whole year. So I didn't do any work. And I do understand that some people will need to work through their treatment. I take my hat off to them if they do, because that's hardcore. But if they have got the ability not to work, then doing those sort of nice things in the morning for you, regardless of whether it's a bit of exercise, as you said, then if you want to get more into meditation, I mean, I was the least likeliest person to get into meditation, I can tell you, but actually it saved me. It changed my perspective. It stopped me thinking about why me, because healthy people do get cancer. It's not, it's not just unhealthy people as you think it's going to be. So, it just sort of led you to a bit more acceptance of it all, and also just being grateful. I think it's the gratitude aspect more than anything else. Grateful that it was picked up, grateful that I was in Spain, because actually the health service here was so quick. It was unbelievable. I actually don't think I would have got the same speed in the UK, unfortunately. Because one, would I have been able to pay for my own MRI, and would I have got it literally within 2 days? Because actually, no, I got it within 24 hours. And then, of course, being phoning straight up to my, I didn't phone it, my doctor did, phoned up my medical company, who then put me straight in tests the next day, and then the next day after that.
And that is, speed is of the essence, isn't it, with anything? And this is where it's so important that if you do notice anything unusual, it's that you push until you get it investigated. Just jumping back to meditation again. Meditation is like anything. Start small. Start with a minute. Don't think you've suddenly got to go into an hour of staring at a candle. There's different ways of meditating. Yeah. But there's different ways of meditating, and for some people it is literally 30 seconds of deep breathing and then building gradually. But again, there's lots of support that you can get and lots of advice you can get. But as you say,
I mean, I think how I started with it was I put the metronome app, set it to 70, and just did square breathing. So you breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, breathe out for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts. And I'd set the timer for 5 minutes. And I'll tell you what, that 5 minutes was an effort. And then bit by bit, 5 minutes went, and then I did it for 10 minutes. And I went, oh, okay, I can do this. And then, I did a few different ones. But as you said, you're right, there's different forms of meditation. I just find that it will put you in a better place. Although at first you go, oh my God, if you're an active person, you want to be doing things. So in effect, it's the type of person that probably needs it. The ones that don't want to do it are probably the people that need it. There's just no way I would have thought I'd be the person that did that. But Emma just was very good. She stuck with me for 6 weeks, going through all these different types of meditations, and so I'm not saying I'm very good at it all the time now, but it did save me for that whole treatment plan. So I was doing my meditations every day for a year.
But again, it's what suits you at that time. Some people go on and meditate for the rest of their lives. Others will come back to it at times when they need it. And it's, again, it's exercise is for life, but there's also different ways. I mean, for a lot of people, meditation, for you, probably swimming is very meditative. So.
Oh, that's what I did. I did it because again, as you know, I want to run. So swimming, I would just have to think of my breath, think of the stroke, can I do one more length? And I know it's only 10 meters. It's not a 25 or a 30 meter pool. This is a small, a home pool. But even so, you're thinking, yeah, I can do another length. I can do another length. And so it is meditative, because all you're thinking about is what you're doing right there, right now, because that's the point. You're living for the present.
Yeah, and that's, if you find it difficult to be still and meditate, then There are walking meditations you can download and take with you. So it's finding what works for you. And once you find it, chances are you actually, even though you don't consciously do it, you're bringing it into other aspects of your life. Even something like washing up or chopping vegetables can be very meditative, because it just calms.
I'm not quite sure washing up is particularly meditative, Sarah. There are such things called a dishwasher.
I know, but if you haven't got a dishwasher, but it's, again, it's just absorbing
No,
yourself.
I'm thinking about another person dishwasher.
Yeah, that's the thing. Alison, it's been really, really good to talk to you. And I know Alison is a very, 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 very highly qualified Pilates instructor and Pilates teacher, in that she teaches training courses. So she is going to come back in and talk exactly about what Pilates is and what sort of things you should be looking for.
How to find a good instructor.
Yeah. So things. But in the meantime, if people did want to find out more about the Pilates training that you do, where would they find you?
Well, I have a website, which is my name, so it's www.alisonsalmond.com. So I offer training courses for actual Pilates teachers already, so I don't tend to teach them from baseline. So if you were a personal trainer looking to do a Pilates course or a mat Pilates course, I could direct you to where to go, and I'd advise you which mat Pilates courses I think that are good and worthwhile. But I tend to deal with people that are already trained in mat Pilates, and then I deliver more of the apparatus or the equipment, however you want to say that. But I also deliver retreats, and retreats are about not just Pilates teachers, they're about real people trying to improve their health, improve Pilates. So I run Pilates retreats, but also women's health retreats as well. So
it's really interesting, and I will make sure all the links are in the information for the podcast when we do it. Alison, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us about your experience with ovarian cancer. And we will definitely talk again, as I say, about all the Pilates stuff. But in the meantime, thank you very much, and keep well, keep healthy.
Yeah. Here we are. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to me, Sarah, and my guest, Alison, talking on creating active lives. Thank you for listening, and we will see you again very soon on another episode. Thank you for listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my guests. Join me each week for more on how to create and sustain everyday activity, and follow me online at Fitness Career Mentor or Fabulous if you're interested in career development and more on creating active lifestyles.